Hello, I'm Jackie Notman, founder of the Open Heart Connection, and in this little presentation I want to talk about why smart people act stupid. And I think most of us have been in the situation where we ask ourselves, what on earth was I thinking? I know I have, and more than once, let me tell you. But just because we may do or say something stupid, it does not imply that we are not smart. And I want to show you in this presentation just why smart people sometimes act maybe not so smart. And you know, it's all to do with the communication that goes on between your heart and your brain. So I'm going to show you how you can wise up through working on your heart. So let's talk about your heart. It's just a pump, isn't it? Well, yes, it is a pump, but you know, it is so much more. Your heart has the strongest electrical field in your body. It is 40 to 60 times stronger than your brain, and you are in constant broadcasting mode. You are sending and receiving information all the time from within your body as well as within your external environment. So your blood is pumped by the heart, and when that happens, it happens on a blood pressure wave. And this pressure wave also contains energetic information, which gets delivered to every single one of your cells. And did you know your heart is part of your body's hormonal system? Well, hormones are chemical messengers, and your heart produces many different hormones, but one of them is called ANP. And the job of ANP is to actually counteract the stress hormone cortisol. And that is very, very important for smart thinking, and I'll explain why in a while. And finally, your heart has its own complex nervous system, and that's how it communicates with your brain. So the two are in constant conversation, but interestingly, your heart sends much more information to your brain than it receives from your brain. So we can kind of see who's in charge, can't we? Now, as our heart is the key communicator to both our brain and body, we need to make sure that it's communicating the right things. We need to make sure that the communication is coherent rather than incoherent. We all know what incoherent communication is like, don't we? It's total nonsense. But when we communicate coherently, we become clear, succinct, and our message is understood. And likewise, when our heart is coherent, or to be more exact, when our heart rhythm is coherent, so is the way our heart communicates with the rest of our body. The stupid things tend to happen when our heart's rhythm is incoherent. So what is our heart's rhythm? It's the pattern that is made from measuring the pulse and the space in between each pulse. It's a little like a piece of music where we have notes and spaces in between. Take a look at these two heart rhythms. Can you see the difference between the two? The top graph shows an incoherent rhythm as a result of feeling frustration, and the bottom is a coherent rhythm as a result of feeling appreciation. What is interesting about these graphs is that both show similar pulse rates. It's the rhythm that makes the difference, and the rhythm depends on the emotions that we are feeling. I'm going to come back to emotions in a moment, but first, let's look at how coherence affects communication with the brain and why our smart thinking is sometimes affected. So what you can see here is our heart communicating with our brain in an incoherent state. When this happens, there is increased activity in a section of the brain known as the amygdala, which stimulates the fight, flight, or freeze stress response. Now, this stress response formed early in the development of the human race, and it's a protective mechanism which we use when we're faced with dangerous situations. We're given the energy to stand and fight the danger, to run away from it, or even to play dead. Now, even though there are very few real dangers to our existence now, this response is still an active part of our makeup and kicks in as a result of stress or certain emotions. When the amygdala is stimulated, there is decreased activity in another part of the brain known as the cortex. And the cortex is where we do our smart thinking. And that, my friend, is why smart people sometimes act stupid. Now, look what happens when our heart is coherent. On the right, you can see decreased activity in the amygdala, which allows the cortex to remain active and for smart thinking to happen, or for our brain to remain engaged. Or when our resilience against stress becomes low, we automatically become incoherent in our heart and in our thinking. But incoherence doesn't just happen in the midst of a stressful situation. It also happens when we are out of the stressful situation, but we're still replaying it. We're still going over and over and over and over, all over. And the stress response also happens when the emotions and feelings we are having could be termed as negative. So let's look at emotions in a little more detail, because, emotions are key to getting coherent and to thinking smarter. So when we are stressed and the amygdala in our brain is activated, it instructs our body to produce cortisol, which gives us the energy for the fight or the flight response. And this is associated with an incoherent heart rhythm, and you can see that on the left-hand side of this graph. When you think about stress, you'll probably agree that the emotions in the top left-hand corner often accompany stressful situations, things like anger or fear or hatred or frustration. These are active feelings where our body is aroused and our heart rate increases. As far as thinking is concerned, this is where we have knee-jerk reactions and make decisions without thinking through the consequences. What is not often considered is that less active feelings, such as those shown in the lower left-hand corner, things such as grief and boredom, also trigger the stress response and result in an incoherent heart rhythm. So this is where our thinking lacks focus and clarity, and when we just cannot make a decision. However, if we move into a place where we are experiencing joy, excitement, appreciation, contentment, or any of those positive feelings shown in the right side of this graph, we remain coherent. We don't stimulate the amygdala, we don't produce cortisol, and we remain communicating with the cortex. And so we make smarter decisions. Which begs the question, how do we get coherent? Well, there is a simple technique. And this technique turns down the volume on your stress levels. It focuses on your heart and draws energy away from your thoughts. It interrupts your body's automatic stress response, and it's not about relaxation or meditation. In fact, this technique can be done anytime, any place, eyes opened or closed, alone or in company, and nobody needs to know you are doing it. Now, I take you through this technique in detail in my video, How to Reconnect with Your Ultimate Source of Wisdom and Support. And it is totally free for you for signing up to the Open Heart Connection. So, if you are ready to get smart, if you are ready to get coherent and start your open heart journey, just click on the arrow and get going.